The problem is I never, showered yet today.
That's a little more information than most of us needed.
I know, but we went to lunch. I went to lunch today, and
Yeah, I mean, Eck, I'm the one that's going bald, and you're wearing the cap like that. Come on.
I know. It's part of my hipness, my extreme hipness, that I can do this. The only reason I can pull it off is because I am that cool.
Okay.
I have a pit that is that.
This couldn't be further from the truth. All right, here we go. Ready? Hello, Hockey World. How you doing? It's June 10th. It's Wednesday. We'll say it's Wednesday. Wednesday, 2015.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports, and I will confirm that it is Wednesday.
You will confirm it's Wednesday? Excellent. So we have confirmation. It's Wednesday. Go about your lives as if it is Wednesday. I'm Eklund from the HockeyBuzzcast and HockeyBuzz.com, and here we are talking about the game that we have. I know. It's like a continual. The weird thing about being on the road, it's like just continually talking about the games, and usually, normally it's just trying to keep it fresh and figure out what to talk about. So we have some things out of Chicago. We have some changes right away tonight. Apparently, Kimmo Timonen's back, which is good. In my opinion, because I wanted him to get his name on the Stanley Cup, and he didn't play in the Stanley Cup Finals. He wouldn't get his name on the Stanley Cup. So I really like Kimmo. Let's start there. So we've got Kimmo coming back. We've got Oduya probable, likely. They keep saying Vermette not Vermette. Versteeg. Versteeg and Vermette. I mess up all the time. So, any of this matter, Kevin, or is this just?
Well, I think it does matter. What I would say about the Timonen situation, I wrote a column yesterday, and I really don't want to get into the long debate about whether or not, these defensemen are going to become fatigued or not for Chicago. Yeah. We've kind of been down that. But I wrote a column because it seems to me now that if the Blackhawks lose that series, fans are always going to wonder whether or not the Roosevelt injury that was just a month ago now, whether that was the domino, the chip that has caused a problem. And I say that because these teams are so close. Mm-hmm. And, we've played 3 games. It's 8-7. Anybody who's watched these games knows, these teams are evenly matched. And now I'm starting to wonder that just a small thing about the loss of a number 5 defenseman. And I looked at the numbers, and, Duncan Keith has played this amount before. And, he's playing 31 minutes. Seabrook played 26 and change last time. Hal Jarmerson played 24 and change. These guys have played these minutes before. As Seabrook pointed out, we're kind of accustomed to doing this. But beyond that, just the fact that now we've gone through Rundblad, Kamitsky. We had now Van Riemsdyk, Timonen. Now we're back to Timonen. I mean, it just goes to show you that we're still trying to, a month later, we're still trying to plug that hole caused by the absence of Roosevelt, who, it was just a very dependable player, an experienced player. So I don't know that it's the fatigue as much as it's just finding a guy that's at Roosevelt's level of competence. Yeah. And the third pairing of Tampa Bay, it's not like it's extraordinary, but, it's dependable. It's been out there. It's competing. They're doing the job. And the Blackhawks have no trust. Yeah, no trust in their 5 and 6. So
it's the loss of Roosevelt and compounded by the trade of Leddy earlier in the season. Now I know during the season they experimented with Trevor Van Riemsdyk. He got injured. They brought in Timonen for a couple second-round picks, and I don't think he's been what they thought he was going to be. I thought they thought he was going to be a little better than he has been. But it's the thing. If you had Roosevelt there, you could sort of mix and match and have one defenseman play for 5 or 6 minutes, and you could spread out the minutes a little more. But without him there, the top 4 are taking on more minutes. And now with Oduya, I mean, it sounds like he's going to play, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be 100%. And you can say nobody is 100% in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final, but if he's limited and is a liability out there playing 20 minutes a night, that swings things even more in the Tampa Bay column than it was before.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
let me just add this though, because I just had this conversation with an NHL team official who, answered my question with a question back. Has anyone noticed any drop off in Seabrook or Hal Jarmison or in Duncan Keith? The answer is no.
No.
Like none of this has been a problem. So, my point in saying all this is maybe we're overplaying this idea about their stretched too thin and all that, and just not concentrating on just the idea that they've lost one guy that they haven't been able to replace. Like it doesn't matter that these guys are playing more and everything else. They just can't find the guy to put in there.
And they don't have that. They don't have that player, and that's real. You're right. It's exactly. This is not the first time that a team has gotten to Stanley Cup Finals and run out of defensemen. This happens a lot. We've been down this road before.
They haven't run out, just that the guys they have. Exactly.
You run out of what they consider NHL.
Because we have seen cases where they have kind of run out of players and they had to call other players up and all that kind of stuff. And I've made my peace with the Letty situation because I was with Mike on that and I thought back. But again, I had to go back and sort of look and see where they were with the cap. I mean, you look back and you think, well, now it looks silly, but when you look at the contract he got from the Islanders,
right,
moving forward and everything, I mean, there was all the logic in the world. Quenneville, didn't have great, overwhelming trust in him.
Right. That's the thing, right? They never trusted Letty either.
Yeah. So, but I just think it's really fascinating that just the loss of a number 5 defenseman has had such an impact, and again, I think it's had an impact in the simplest form, which is not what it's meant to Seabrook or any of those guys, but just the fact that they can't find one guy out of their group that they feel is even remotely close to Roosevelt, who is not a great player.
Right.
But in this series, when the competitive levels of the teams are so close,
right,
that number 5 defenseman is a significant factor.
That's become the thing.
And to your point, Kevin, they had an entire season to fill that hole by trading Letty. I think if they lose this series and you have this Comiskey, Van Riemsdyk, Rundblad situation and the minutes taking their toll on the defense, Stan Bowman is probably going to take a little bit of heat for giving up 2 second-round picks for Kimmo Timonen when Kimmo Timonen didn't play the entire year. You would have. I mean, it's of course hindsight is 20/20, but you would think that you would get somebody for that price, get somebody who was more dependable and healthy, and could potentially be there when the team needed him. You could never imagine that Roosevelt would go out like this, but injuries always happen, and you have to prepare for that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, he should have gotten a guy who, because Timonen, I remember Eck and I had talked about it when it was going down, and he, you thought he looked pretty good in practice, right, as I recall.
Yeah.
But he was still a question mark. And your point is, there were guys out there who were playing regularly who were not question marks. What you saw is what you got. You had no idea what you were getting with Timonen. So I mean, that's a fair criticism that when they clearly were making a move to improve their depth, and the move they made, there was questions about it right from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, and there's guys, you have to remember, like guys like Jordan Leopold, players like that who are out there that probably they would love to have right now. Like guys who were.
Jeff Petrie was a 3rd-round pick. It was a 3rd-round pick for Jeff Petrie. So
right.
I mean, when you compare what Montreal gave up for Petrie, I think there was an extra pick in there as well. It was like a lower-round pick. But when you compare what Montreal gave up for Petrie and when you compare what Chicago gave up for Timonen, there you go.
No, I mean Chicago gave up 2. It turns out to be 2 second-round picks now. So. Yeah, that it's a huge difference. But I remember when the Flyers were against the Chicago Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup Finals, the Flyers ran out of defensemen. Exactly the same situation. They were. I remember the Flyers pulling up guys like Gustafsson and players from out of the minors to play in a Stanley Cup Final that they had no right playing in. I mean, the players that just weren't even NHL players were on that.
The most infamous one was Buffalo in 2006 when they're calling up guys like Jeff Gilson. To play in a game.
Yeah, Jay McKee, like I've said before many times, if Jay McKee doesn't go down for the Sabres, I think the Sabres beat Carolina in 7th game, and I think the Sabres go on and win the Stanley Cup against the Oilers.
Agreed.
And that's my point about this series. The Blackhawk fans, if they lose the series, will be saying similar things. If Roosevelt doesn't go down, we win the cup because these teams are so close, just as the Oilers and Hurricanes, were.
Right.
So
it's hard to argue that. Now tonight, I still am of the belief that there's no way this ends in 5 games. Like I can't see Tampa winning the next 2 games. But tonight, like Russ said, defense. If you lose defense, you can lose. I still just don't see it. I really haven't seen. I guess why what you're saying, Kevin, is right. Like even though Chicago has had they've played these guys so much and they've had these glaring weaknesses on defense. I don't really see Chicago's defense as being that terrible throughout the playoffs.
No, it's not.
But they keep saying.
Yeah, but you still got to have a guy. You can't divide the 60 minutes among 4 guys.
Right.
We know that. I mean, you could stretch it, but you can't stretch it that much. So these other guys have to play, and the drop off from Roosevelt to these other players. Now, I think Van Riemsdyk played pretty well, so I think they might have solved the 5. Maybe we'll have to see tonight, but.
As long as he's healthy, he looks like he's an NHL player. Yeah, I agree with you.
No, he looked good. I thought he looked, especially for a guy who had been off. But we don't know whether we've fixed the 6 yet. So
right.
Yeah, right.
But it's
right, and that's what we'll find out again tonight. And I think that, and then Bishop again is going tonight. He's it's not officially he's going. I guess that he took warm-ups and they're not going to say who's going to go.
He's going. I mean, if he went in Game 3, he's sure going to play in Game 4. Couldn't be worse than 3 in terms of the way he looked. He performed admirably.
He performed really well. But don't you think? I mean, if you have a bad injury, like say it is like I've heard a high ankle sprain from a pretty good source. I mean, that's not definite, but it's a pretty good source who knows the situation pretty well. If that's the case, then your doctor's surely not going to tell you the best thing to do is go out and play Game 3 for a high ankle sprain. I mean, this can't be improving his situation. I mean, if it's nothing that I always love when they say you can't make it any worse. Well, you can. You can always make it worse.
Yeah, no, but in this case, I think you can make it worse if that, depending what the injury is. I mean, there are injuries that are, that I get it. There are broken bone injuries in the arms, and that if you cast it, you're really not going to make it worse.
You're not going to make it worse. But at the same time,
in this case, you're right for sure.
There's something. I mean, and at the same time, even those broken bone injuries, I've always argued that if you're playing with a broken bone, you're compensating all over the place, and that leaves you suspect all sorts of other injuries, that can perhaps take you down too. So it can get worse. If he was, God knows how sore he had to be yesterday. I mean, they didn't skate, of course, but then there's just adrenaline. I mean, it's the Stanley Cup Finals, so maybe this is enough adrenaline to get through. If they're winning, if they're losing, it becomes a much harder. If they're down 3-1 in this series, it would be probably a lot harder for Ben Bishop to get up for this. But gosh, if they can go potential of going up 3-1 in the series, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's also a scenario act where if the mentality may be let's play Bishop until he can't play anymore. Let's see how much we can get out of him, and then we go to Vasilevsky. While he can still play, let's go with him.
Yeah, and I think what you said yesterday, Mike, is true. That I think that the team has rallied behind this thing. Yeah. I think this injury has become a rallying point, and at some point there's something to that. You can, there has to be something very inspiring about seeing Bishop playing behind you the way he's playing, despite the fact how much pain he's in. So if you're a player, that's got to be lifting you up. So yeah, we'll see. But I think tonight's going to be a fantastic game. I think it's going to be really. I mean, we're going to see everything Chicago has tonight. This is going to be the Hawks at their best. I think. I don't think, and whenever the Hawks have had to be at their best, they've been pretty damn good. So,
well, the one thing about this series too, and I know everybody knows this, but man, has this been an entertaining playoff? And the reason I know it is just from a selfish, practical, journalistic standpoint is I now write a column based on the game, and I don't write a game story, I write a column. So. Right. I have to have my first column done right at the buzzer, and the way you do that, of course, is that you sort of figure out who you believe is going to win, and you kind of have the column set. And it's just been torturous since the conference finals to write these columns because the lead changes and it's tied, and two of these 3 games have been decided in the final minutes, and you write you've got you've got half of one column in this page and half another, and you're trying to piece it together, and trying to bring some level of coherence. Because when people read it, it's going to be 7 hours after the game, not knowing that I had to write that first column, with a minute to go in the game. So, just from my own, perspective of having to struggle to get these, done. Now, obviously I come back with a column after the game, but I can testify that these games have been so exciting because you don't know what's going to happen right to the final buzzer. And it was like this in the Anaheim-Chicago series was great, as well. And and Tampa, obviously, we know what their march to the playoffs. So I don't know how anybody could not have watched the playoffs fully this season and complained about.
And I heard some people the other day complaining about it too. I heard some people saying these were boring playoffs, and I don't see that at all. I mean, what we haven't seen yet, which we will now see tonight. Thank you very much, Rich and Malcolm. What we haven't seen a long overtime game in this series, which we will definitely have to see tonight. Now that I've said that, but that's coming. Like we have not seen an overtime game yet, but that always happens. And in a game like tonight, where you can see it really happening, where both teams are going to be definitely at their defensive best, you would think, that it could just accelerate from there. I wanted to also get into some rumors that are going on because I was cheering. I got off the phone with somebody right before this, and contract talks between the Wild and Devin Dubnyk aren't going well. I was just told. I was told that this could be an issue, and the long-standing thought was, okay, Dubnyk's coming back to Minnesota. Of course, it's a great fit for him. It's a great fit for the Wild. They finally solved their goalie issues of all these years. And but of course, Dubnyk holds a lot of power right now in these negotiations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, it's not really looking that great, from what I was told. That can change quickly, and probably will change quickly. But as of this point, I mean, what happens if Dubnyk suddenly looks and the San Jose Sharks are out there and staring down and say, okay, we're the San Jose Sharks, and Andy Niemi's not coming back. We make sense. We make sense to go get Dubnyk.
There's a market for goaltending, Ak.
Always is, but
not only San Jose. I think I still contend that St. Louis is going to be looking for a goaltender. And obviously, if Dubnyk leaves Minnesota, then now Minnesota's looking for a goaltender because they're not going to go back to Darcy Kemper and Backstrom. So I think there are a few teams out there, and again, you have to factor in Cam Talbot is on the market with the Rangers. The number 2. He's got 1 year left in his contract. I believe Jonathan Bernier could be on the market with the Leafs. He's an RFA, and I'm not sure if they're going to want to spend $3 or $4 million on a goaltender while they're in a rebuild. And possibly Vasilevsky, but it's too early to tell. I think they want to keep him as the goalie of the future. Maybe Martin Jones in LA. So there are goaltenders that are going to be out there, and Edmonton is probably the team that's looking the most for a goaltender, and we don't know who they're going to go after.
I agree with all that. Only I would argue that there's only one attractive goalie, and that's Dubnyk. If he doesn't re-sign in Minnesota, he would be the guy everyone wants. All the goalies you mentioned all have interesting aspects about them, but they're also none of them are proven. And Dubnyk obviously had just an incredible season, and it appears that he's sort of figured it all out. I think it would be just incredibly funny. And what if he liked it when he was in Edmonton, and he really sort of would like to go back there? Wouldn't that be something?
I think we have Ryan on, Ryan who knew him, Ryan Gardner, who has been on for a while. He's been doing something else, but he used to talk about Dubnyk and Edmonton liking it there, if I remember. Like he did enjoy his time there.
Well, it would be fun. So
yeah.
But I wonder if the fans are emotionally scarred from Dubnyk being there. And he was, and
I think his numbers would heal all the wounds from last, But I know what you're saying. I mean, it didn't work out the last time he was there. But, this is the Dubnyk 2.0, or maybe 3.0, the way it's played. But, I just don't like any of the goaltending options out there. I mean, Jones is intriguing a little bit, but, we've seen these younger goalies get picked up, and, suddenly you discover that, they were a better backup than they are a starter. And, Bernier is the best example of that, really. And I was a big believer in Bernier. it seems like I saw him play live a few times. Every time I saw him play live and he started, he was outstanding.
Yeah.
And then I watched him with the Maple Leafs. He wasn't the same goalie. He just wasn't as confident. So.
Well, I mean, he's a victim of a terrible defense in front of him, and that's what I think. I think he has a pretty good reputation around the league, and if you have a team out there like St. Louis that has the defense that they have, and they went after a guy like Bernier, I think he would be a completely different goaltender. But to your point, Kevin, Talbot and Martin Jones, I believe, are both 27 years old. They're not kids. They're not in their early 20s.
Yeah, I'm not a Talbot guy. I like him, but I don't think he's the answer. And to be honest, if I was a fan in St. Louis, and the answer to their goaltending was to bring in Bernier, I'd go, why is he better than Jake Allen? I mean, Jake Allen was the top goalie in the AHL, and are you going to condemn him and crucify him upside down because he had a couple of bad games in the playoffs and his first kick at the can? I don't know.
The love their minor league goalie too. I mean, that's the thing that I keep coming back to, and he's
Binnington.
What's his name again, Mike?
Jordan Binnington.
Yeah, he's the one. When I talk to people in St. Louis, they say that's the guy. He's going to be the guy who's going to take them to the promised land. And he was really good last year. Everybody, of course, is not mentioning who I think the best goalie out there is. No one, and it's not Carter Hutton. It is Ramo. I mean, I think that Kyrie Ramo, who's a UFA, is completely getting blown off in this situation. I think this kid has shown that he can play in the NHL. He was a big part of taking a team that had no business of getting to the playoffs, and yet he's getting zero respect from anywhere that I can see.
But Calgary knows him best, and they're not re-signing him.
Right.
That is bizarre to me. I mean, I guess so, but I'm just talking about watching the kid play. I watched Calgary a lot this year because they were a fun team to watch, and every time I watched them play, I was impressed by Ramo. The way he moves, he's amazingly quick. He's got huge amounts of speed. He's very competitive. I don't get it. I mean, I think that's where Edmonton should go, in my opinion. But you've got a young goalie. They're probably going to want to get an older goalie into Edmonton to give him a little bit more stability.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Ramo, and he had a great year with Calgary. Calgary played great in front of him, but he follows in the line of what Edmonton's done in the last couple of years with Scrivens and with Fast. Now,
that's fair. I don't think there's anything comparing them. I think that Ramo has come in and done nothing but succeed in the NHL level.
Well, that is fair, Eck. It really is, because the point is they've brought in a bunch of unproven goalies. Now, an argument you could make, and it's a good argument, is what are their options? What are Edmonton's options? I think they almost are going to have to take a guy that has some question marks, because there are no great goaltending options available out there. We listed all the guys, and all of them have some level of intrigue, but they also have an element of uncertainty about them, and so they're going to be in the same boat they've always been in, which is they're going to have to guess. Who's on the upward climb. And your argument is that you believe it's Ramo, and maybe it is, but
Eddie Lack may be traded from Vancouver. I mean, there have been some whispers about Kerry Lettinen in Dallas that they might be willing to move him. Cam Ward has got 1 year left at $6 million.
There's a player that I talked to somebody today, and Cam Ward's game came up today when I was talking to somebody, and they said that's where Edmonton they thought Edmonton was going to go. And
Can you get him to go there? I guess is the question. I mean, he's got 1 year left. He's lived there in Carolina a long time. He's got a no trade clause.
No, that's exactly right. But the question is, how much more interesting is Edmonton now for people with Connor McDavid, with the new coach? Edmonton, I think, and if you're looking at 1 year, if you've got 1 year to go play with McDavid and get a chance to really be, it's not completely ridiculous to think that Cam Ward would go there. I mean, it's not. To me, last year was absurd. I was hearing things about Cam Ward last year as well, and to me, it made no sense. This year, maybe.
See, to me, the guy I thought he might go after is Khudobin, who he knows.
Right.
Peter Chiarelli obviously knows him. So, but I don't think Carolina wants to trade him. So,
I think he's their future number one. The thing is, if Edmonton goes after Cam Ward, he would be basically a 1 year Band-Aid. You would think that they would be probably going after somebody else, another young goaltender who needs a year. Like say for example, if Chiarelli trades for Malcolm Subban with his old team. If he gets him and he's a year away from playing in the NHL, then he could play in the American Hockey League and gain another year of experience while a guy like Ward played up with the Oilers, and then Subban or somebody like him could come up and then take care of the job next year. That makes a bit of sense, unless they would plan on trading for Ward and extending him. And with his injury history and his age, I don't know if you really want to do that.
That's a good point, but I think what you need in Edmonton is a solid veteran type presence, like in goal. Something that for 1 or 2 years here while this team is learning. You do need a goalie that's going to be the goalie that's going to stay with this team and grow with this team. But you need the easiest way to get Edmonton competitive right away is by giving them a half decent goalie, a better than half decent goalie, like a decent goalie. Will make Edmonton suddenly, and this is what Calgary saw last year, right? This is why Calgary, the big reason why Calgary was more competitive last year was Hiller and Ramo.
Edmonton is not a goaltender away from being competitive for a playoff spot. They're a goaltender and I think 2 to 3 defensemen. And
you got a different type situation there now. I mean, there's 2 levels. I mean, sure. The Oilers have been poor for so long that now their objective, if you're Peter Chiarelli, is to be competitive.
Right.
Like, you can't fix everything overnight, and it doesn't really matter how far away you are now. But I think you have to start by just having a competent goalkeeper. And, I think what this conversation has encircled is the idea that there just aren't many options available out there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably going to be creative and basically inquire about somebody that we're not thinking of because it doesn't seem like he's available. Because they really do need to do something. And if it comes down to it, people have guessed right before. Dubnyk was a guess.
Right.
I keep pointing that out. When that move was made, nobody thought it would end up the way it did. Nobody did.
Yeah.
I bet Chuck Fletcher couldn't have envisioned in his wildest dream that he would play that well.
Yeah. I mean, I think they thought it was a real temporary thing. I really think they thought it was a temporary thing, and then turned into something fantastic, like you're saying.
And so maybe this the 19th time is the charm for the Oilers. Where maybe they'll guess right this time. It's a different guy guessing.
Right.
And I mean, maybe it is Bernier, maybe it's Jones, maybe it's Niemi. I don't think it is, but who knows?
The other thing I was following today was in Nashville. You've got Mike Ribeiro, contract negotiations. Another one that's kind of dicey right now, for sure. And then the option of Carl Soderberg for the Predators, which is, I think, they're looking at centers, and Ribeiro is obviously their top center now. If Soderberg comes in, is he a better top center? I mean, this I think is how they're looking at it right now.
He's not a top center.
No, I don't think so either.
He's a number. I don't. Yeah, he's an adequate number 2 and maybe a really good number 3, but he's not a top center. And if they put him in the position that Ribeiro was in, I mean, Ribeiro had a really good year. He's always been a good playmaker on the power play. He's got his deficiency.
Well, Ribeiro does what he does, and he's a very skilled player. But at the same time, Soderberg gives them something that they have never had, which is a big center. Like, he's a big guy.
Well, they had Jason Arnott for a while.
Yeah, Jason Arnott, which is a while.
Well, it was a while ago, but I'm saying, that's the situation. Like, Arnott wasn't a number 1 either.
Well, I mean,
one thing I would point out, we all look at that team and we see Ribeiro as number 1. But when you talk to the Predators about who their number 1 center is, they say it's Fisher.
Right.
So they saw Ribeiro as kind of a 2, but anybody who played against them would have said the negative of that team is Ribeiro is their number 1.
And Fisher's probably going to re-sign a hometown discount deal there to stay. But
he's not really number 1 either, as we all know.
Right.
Not at all.
But he's also injury prone. So, I mean, he's been out with so many injuries for them. He's missed so many games, and it's hard to tell. When he gets in there, he's a huge influence, no question about it. He's a great, and he's one of the kind of leaders that they need. He's an enormous player for them. Someone also brought up Justin Williams' name today with the Nashville Predators. And Justin Williams is going to be an interesting one to follow, as I've been working on the rumor chart, which is done now. It should be posted any minute. But, Justin Williams, the teams that are interested in him are the teams that you would expect to be interested in him. When I talked around a little bit, the teams that have struggled in the playoffs, that want to get a playoff guy to take him to another level, right? So, and I don't know how much value Justin Williams really has, or at some point Justin Williams is getting up there, but he's still shown to be a great playoff performer. But that was a year ago now, and a year can change a lot of things. What do you think about Justin Williams' value, Kev?
Well, I think he's has value to teams that know they're going to make the playoffs and really would like to have more scoring. He's a scoring depth guy, but he's long in the tooth now, and getting up there. And I don't think he's one of the premium guys. I don't think there'll be 15 people calling him trying to get him to go there. But he's a very good player, and he's got a great playoff history.
So far, after one day really of looking into Justin Williams, I've come up with 4 saying that are interested, at least: St. Louis, San Jose, Nashville, and Montreal. So those 4, and they're all teams like in that realm that you were talking about, teams that are probably going to make the playoffs. I mean, San Jose didn't make the playoffs last year, but they still see themselves as a playoff team.
And they have a playoff roster.
Right. They should be a playoff team. The Predators are going to make the playoffs and need need a player who can compete. I mean, everyone wants, Justin Williams has competed hard against Chicago. That's a factor. You've got to beat Chicago if you're in the West. Especially if you're the Nashville or Minnesota, you've got to look at that.
I think he's born to play for the Predators because he's not going to command the large dollars. They always have 4 or 5 Justin Williamses on their team. Guys who are just a little, won't cost him, $5-6 million, a little less than that, and can score and do some things. So
but he brings with him. He does bring with him 2 Stanley Cups, and that does matter. I mean, we debated earlier about how much that matters, but
I think he's got 3.
Right, he's got 3 Stanley Cups. Sorry, yeah, of course.
He's at the point of his career act that he's what Mark Recchi was to the Bruins in 2011, a third line guy with experience, with a winning pedigree, and maybe he's amenable to signing a 1-year deal. But I don't think that's the answer for Nashville. I think Nashville in this summer is going to have to get themselves a goal scorer. I mean, preferably somebody up the middle. You mentioned the rumor about Mikko Koivu a couple days ago. I mean, that might be a fit. He's a big-bodied center. But if not him, I think they're going to be in on the Kessel sweepstakes.
Kessel's definitely in their world. We're getting some kind of evil sound right now. Is it coming from you, Mike? Coming from us. Kevin, you want to log out and log back in?
You think it's me? Okay.
I think it's you.
I'll do that.
Log out, log back in. Thanks.
Yep, it stopped now.
Or is it me? No, it was Kevin, right?
Yep, I don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think Kessel's definitely going to be on the Predators' radar. I think that the teams that I have for I can look at my chart right now, even though it's not up yet officially. But the guys I have looking at Kessel right now are, from talks I had today. Let's see, here it is, and leading up, of course, to today. They're the teams you'd expect. I have Florida at 35, Nashville at 30, Colorado at 15, Phoenix at 10, and Toronto at 10. That's the percentages I have right now. So I only have 10% staying in Toronto. I really do believe that they're going to get rid of him. I do. I mean, and just talking to people, I think that it's the one move that it's the sacrificial lamb they have to slaughter. Phil Kessel.
The impression I get, Eck, is that in and of itself will not satisfy them. It cannot be just Kessel.
Well, no, but you have to start there. I mean,
you have to start there. I think it's Kessel. I think it's Kessel and Phaneuf. They have to move.
Phaneuf is much harder to move, and everyone says that to me.
That Kessel or Phaneuf?
No, that Phaneuf is much harder to move. And that's because Phaneuf has baggage, and Kessel has baggage too, but Phaneuf has baggage with players.
Right.
I mean, the difference between moving. Thanks, Gavin. I think we're talking about the difference of who's harder to move, Phil Kessel or Dion Phaneuf, in your mind.
I would say it's Phaneuf, but I think both of them are movable. Phaneuf. The problem is people are going to view him as still a defensive liability. But my contention would be with the right program, surrounded by the right defensemen, with a better understanding of what his role would be, and a happy Phaneuf, he could be a better player. But I think both of them could be moved, and I think both of them could be helpful. Phil Kessel. I feel like I've been an apologist for Phil Kessel, but I think he's a valuable player. Like, there aren't many guys like him who are a consistent goal scorer, and I'm going to give him a mulligan on this season just because of the unique circumstances that were the Toronto Maple Leafs. Right. But if you look at his record, he's been a consistent goal scorer. Right. And those guys are hard to find, and he has speed, and everybody's looking for speed, and he's got the scoring touch. And I think if you leave him alone, he just is not a gregarious person. And if he were in a market where he didn't face the media pressure that he faces in Toronto, I think he could be very valuable. So I think both of them could be.
I think Kessel's going to flourish wherever he goes, and I think that the task in front of Brendan Shanahan is to get the value of the full value of what Kessel has been and will be, and not based on that 25-goal year where he disappeared in the second half. Just like Phaneuf, Phaneuf's $7 million salary, I think, is less and less of a factor as we approach the draft in July 1st, because you see the defenseman and the price tag of a guy like Petrie making $5.5 million, Nick Leddy making $5.5 million.
Not to interrupt, but is Phaneuf's salary $7 million every year, or is it one of those situations?
It's flat. I believe it's a flat $7 million.
Okay.
Not front loaded.
About that.
Kessel's front loaded. I think he's an $8 million cap hit, but I think he makes 10 this year. So for Kessel and maybe even for Phaneuf, they're going to have to take salary back, take a cap hit back.
Yeah.
But based on the few defensemen that are in free agency this year that are, I think, top echelon guys, and the fact that players who are being signed are being paid closer and closer to $7 million, I think it's going to be that much easier for the Leafs to move Phaneuf and get a good return for him.
Yeah, I mean, the one team I talked to somebody about an hour ago, and I asked them what team did they think was in trouble. This is the last question I'll throw at the panel before we get out a little bit early today. Mm-hmm. What team do they think is in more trouble than anyone is willing to admit? I thought this was an interesting question. Like, let's think about the teams that are out there that we know that Toronto's in trouble. We know they're going to be terrible. They've told us they're going to be terrible. They've prepared us for this already. But I think that. And his answer was interesting, but I wanted to get your answer first, and I'll start with you, Mike, on this one, and then you go, Kevin, since you're very much in a thoughtful pose.
Yeah,
it's a tough question, and I'll throw out New Jersey because
more trouble than I see. I think it is a tough question, but go on, continue.
Yeah, I mean they have a lot of roster space. I think before the trades at the deadline, they had 10 unrestricted free agents. Now they have 8. They still have a lot of age. Guys like Camilleri's still an effective forward, but guys like Elias.
You're out on Mike Camilleri. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, but he performed last year.
He does perform, but he's not.
I'm just saying. Patrick Elias is approaching 40 years old. You have young players like Zajac and like Henrique who have not, achieved the level that a lot of people thought that they were going to. So they have underachieving players. What they have is they have a good young goaltender and they have some good defensive prospects, but they have a lot of work to do in terms of filling that roster. And I think that that's going to be Ray Shero's task over the next year or two, is to bring some prospects in, and maybe they're going to have to suffer like Toronto and a couple other teams will suffer over the next few years.
Yeah, it's a good answer. What do you think, Kev?
Well, I'm going to go. I'm vacillating between the Bruins and the Penguins, but I think I'm going to go with the Penguins. And I say that because of the circumstances.
Yeah.
They need to add a scorer. There are no scorers available. And they're going to lose Ehrhoff, probably Paul Martin as well. So they're going to need to revamp their defense. The Dupre trade last season, it could come back to haunt them because now they don't have the depth on defense they had before. And the two of their key guys, who should have been key guys, Kunitz and David Perron, did not perform well down the stretch, and we just don't know where they are. I mean, there were indications that Kunitz had the wheels had fallen off. So maybe it was just a slump, but it looked like it was worse. And Perron played well initially, but stopped playing. So if those two, if they can't come back or they can't be moved, now you're left with Hornquist as the only winger for
right.
for both Malkin and Crosby.
That's crazy.
And you're paying $7.5 million to Letang, and you don't know what Letang you're going to get next year, if at all.
Yeah, and you nailed the team that my guy said, Kevin. He said Pittsburgh, and he said it right off the bat. He said because listen, they're going to by the end of this, by July 15th, they would have lost their entire defensive core with the exception of Letang from 2 years ago, and. Of course they've added Mata, which is fine, but they lost, they lost 2 defenders last year, right? They lost 3 defenders last year. They're going to lose 2 defenders this year because he said Paul Martin is not coming back, that he has no desire to re-sign there, and this.
Yeah, that's for sure. He's not coming back.
And it looks like Paul Martin might follow the Minnesota train that everybody else follows, and that's where he could end up back in Minnesota because he lives there in the off season. He's a Minnesota kid like everybody else who plays there. It seems like.
And Scuderi is at best a 5'6" now, and he's
and Scuderi is he's not. I mean, you can't hang your hat on him anymore. He's a great role player to have. I mean, the Blackhawks would like him right now, but I don't think Scuderi is the guy you're gonna be. So really, they're looking at Letang, who there have been rumors. I mean, that Letang could be a casualty, but a cap casualty, which I just don't think is possible given the fact that all these other guys are moving.
Plus, Letang, in my opinion, was having his best season before the injury. I mean, he was playing really, really well for them. So.
But the one thing he said to me, which I thought was really interesting, and I'll repeat, was that the Penguins have an advantage over other teams because if there are defensemen out there, it's not hard to get people to go to play for the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's the advantage. So he said, you have free agents out there that do exist. Ehrhoff's not going to go back, but there are other defensemen out there, he said, that you could get to come there without, it's not going to be that difficult. So it's just a matter of them signing the right guys. I heard, they might have some interest in Nick Grossman, out of Philly, who was, he's just more of a defensive defenseman, but they need defensive defensemen on that team. So how they play that out, there's other guys as well, out there. And it's hard to imagine, like them trading with the Rangers, but Dan Boyle might be a good fit for the Penguins. But that's hard to imagine that. But that's the kind of player that they need to get. And I asked him about Mike Green, and he said he's too much like Letang. But that was something that he wouldn't rule out. Because Mike Green's going to be a free agent, obviously, and a lot of people are touting him as maybe the best free agent. What are your thoughts on that one, Kev?
I have him as the most attractive guy because so many teams are looking for a power play guy. He obviously, I'm guessing he's adjusted his game to play for Barry Trotz. So you get maybe a more improved Green than he was even 2 seasons ago. There'll be a long line. He'll basically have his pick of where he wants to go.
And of those top defensemen, he might be the one most willing to take a 1-year deal like Ehrhoff did last year because he's coming off a year where his offensive numbers were not great in Washington. He could go to Pittsburgh and put up great offensive numbers with Crosby and then go to free agency off of that and probably make more than he's making right now, which is I think is $6 million a year.
I don't think he'll take a 1-year deal. There'll be a number of teams that'll give him a long-term deal.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Mike that the theory makes a lot of sense, but the fact
he's going to go for a long-term deal just because
there's so much
security.
It's going to be available to him at the end of the day. He's going to he's going to be able to. It's not. There are not enough players out there, that he has to do. He has to do that. I mean, there's going to be somebody who's going to take a chance. They're going to have to take a chance and bring him in.
And the social media has sort of changed free agency a little bit too because we tend to see the warts more as opposed to the strengths, and his strength and his ability to move the puck is still outstanding, and that's what these teams are going to see because of the need is so great. So
and how good would that look in Pittsburgh? I mean, that would be
although he is a lot like Letang. Like to me, the absolute perfect fit is Detroit. because they don't have what he does. And in Pittsburgh, he's going to be competing to be the main point guy on the power play.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's two guys on the point, but we all know there's only one point guy.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You know, life went through Nick Lidstrom.
Yes.
Right. You know, and life will go through Letang in Pittsburgh.
And Detroit has been dying to get a right-hand shot defenseman for, a couple years, and there you go. I mean, he's, him and Kronval on the same pairing.
What's up with Zidlicki in Detroit, Kev?
No go.
No go.
No.
It seemed like
he started out well, and then just he didn't play well.
Yeah, ran out of, in the beginning there. Yeah, it was a couple games where it looked like he had been a Red Wing his entire life. Like he just stepped right in.
Yeah, he absolutely looked like he was born to play for the Red Wings. But
I wouldn't doubt, and until it doesn't happen, I'll keep saying this. I wouldn't doubt that Detroit and Toronto revisit Phaneuf. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
Well, we make it an absolute must to mention Dion Phaneuf in every Red Wings podcast. So.
Right.
Yeah, good. No, it's good. We have to keep doing that.
Yeah,
for sure.
So.
And no, that's all the time we have for today, guys. So we got to get to the game. Enjoy it tonight. I'm going to be doing something a little different tonight, which is kind of cool. So check back on the website. I have a little new technology I'm going to try out tonight at the game that I think might blow your mind. It's really cool. I'm not going to talk about it until I actually try it and see if it works for sure. But that's all I can say. But do check back during the game to the website. I might be posting something pretty neat. We'll be back again. Well, let's see. Wait, tomorrow is Thursday. We'll be back again tomorrow. Although tomorrow is a travel day, so I'm not quite sure yet on the timing of that. So we'll figure it out. But at some point tomorrow, Mike and I and Russ or Kevin, and depending on how this all plays out, we'll get a show, and maybe it might be on the earlier side tomorrow. We'll see how it all plays out.
Okay.
Remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.